Hey everybody, Jason Burmis here, and we continue to ramp up the rhetoric, just like I've said, and ramp up what I would call the aggression against Iran. Here it is, folks, more sanctions, but we're going to go a lot further than more sanctions in this broadcast. I'm going to let Trump talk for about a minute and a half of signing up for these new sanctions. And, the propaganda and talks of military aggression by the enemy when, seriously, folks, it is the other way around. And we are in a dangerous, dangerous situation. So, without further ado, let's get to Trump. But what I'm really going to focus on is Jake Tapper and Pence, and then Wesley Clark really explaining so many years ago, post 9/11, that this is the last leg of the tour. This is the last leg of that neocon we're taking over the Eurasian region tour. Okay, so let's check this out.
Okay, thank you very much. In a few moments, I'll be signing an executive order imposing hard-hitting sanctions on the Supreme Leader of Iran and the Office of the Supreme Leader of Iran and many others. Today's action follows a series of aggressive behaviors by the Iranian regime in recent weeks, including shooting down of U.S. drones. You shot down the drone. I guess everyone saw that one, and many other things. They've done many other things aside from the individual drone. You saw the tankers, and we know of other things that were done also, which were not good and not appropriate. The Supreme Leader of Iran is one who ultimately is responsible for the hostile conduct of the regime. He's respected within his country. His office oversees the regime's most brutal instruments, including the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Sanctions imposed through the executive order that I'm about to sign will deny the Supreme Leader and the Supreme Leader's office and those closely affiliated with him and the office access to key financial resources and support. The assets of Ayatollah Khomeini and his office will not be spared from the sanctions. These measures represent a strong and proportionate response to Iran's increasingly provocative actions. We will continue to increase pressure on Tehran.
So let's just stop it. I'm going to let him speak for a little bit longer. But let's talk about those provocative actions that they're talking about. Number one, they provided evidence that possibly, maybe, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard took what they claim is a limpet mine off a vessel. So possibly, maybe, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard went on a reconnaissance mission in their waters and took off an alleged limpet mine. That's one. Two, they shot down a drone that even CNN at one point stumbled up and said that was in their airspace, but it was in international waters when it landed. And again, this is a drone that can go 60,000 feet. It was misreported what it initially was. And then all of a sudden, that's an act of aggression and almost war. And they say, oh, well, Trump, he used restraint. He was going to kill 150 people over a drone. That first it was 185 million, then 180, then 110 million. Wouldn't matter to me if it was a $2 billion drone. It's not worth one life, especially because all we've seen is that they have protected their waterways and airspace. That's the evidence you provided. A lot of other things. Are they bad hombres, Mr. President?
Until the regime abandons its dangerous activities and its aspirations, including the pursuit of nuclear weapons, increased enrichment of uranium, development of ballistic missiles, engagement in and support for terrorism, fueling of foreign conflicts, and belligerent acts directed against the United States and its allies. The agreement that was signed was a disaster. It was not doing what it was supposed to do. Many bad things were taking place. And most importantly, it was so short-term that within a very short number of years, they would be able to make nuclear weapons, and that's unacceptable.
So let's just stop. I'm not going to go into length on this discussion, but his largest point is that according to this deal, within years, they would still be able to make nuclear weapons. That was the largest flaw. Now, until then, these acts of aggression had gone down quite a bit, and now they're just popping up. And the next level of that attacking is cyber attacks. They were saying, oh, well, Iran is attacking the U.S. and U.S. cyber attacks are unsuccessful. The U.S. is saying, hey, we're crippling Iran's military command and control systems. I don't know whether that's to try to propagate to the American people this will be a cakewalk. 81 million people live here. They have a real military. They've shown no signs of aggression. At least there's been no evidence provided of that to me. But now we've got John Bolton and Fox News. They're going to tell me all about it.
Trace, officials confirm the U.S. military launched a cyber attack against Iran following the downing of the American drone. Over the weekend, Iranian forces were quiet, but tensions remain high in the region. On a visit to Israel, National Security Advisor John Bolton had this blunt warning for Iran.
Neither Iran nor any other hostile actor should mistake U.S. prudence and discretion for weakness. No one has granted them a hunting license in the Middle East.
Look at the mustachioed madman. There he is. There he is, John Bolton, meeting in Israel. So odd. Geez, what could he be doing over in Israel? Man, Israel's never wanted to go with, oh, wow, they have. They've really wanted to do things in that region. Weird. Weird with all those allegiances and whatnot. And Bolton pushing for this for 20 plus years. Now, I want to explain how long and how strong they have been on this plan. Here's Wesley Clark describing how, I believe around September, 20th or something, he says, around there in 2001, that there was a plan for a 5-year domination of these regions. And now Iran is really the only big name on that list, and we'll go over that in a moment. But most people don't understand that at all. So let's see.
About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the Joint Staff who used to work for me. And one of the generals called me in. He said, "Sir, you got to come in. You got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, "No." He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September.
Really? We're going to war with Iraq? Iraq weapons of mass destruction? Iraq? That Iraq? Huh? Wait, what? Wait, 10 days in? Well, that sounds weird.
I said, "We're going to war with Iraq. Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." So I said, "Well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda?" He said, No. He says, "There's nothing new that way. They just made the decision to go to war with Iraq." He said, "I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we've got a good military and we can take down governments." And he said, "I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail."
Well, let's stop it right there. The Iran, Al-Qaeda connection has been around for a long time. And let me explain to you what that means. Before bin Laden even, attacked on 9/11, before bin Laden became the boogeyman that he was, there's somebody who wrote an entire book on him. And if you look at this video here, the man who sold us OBL, okay, right here, the man who sold us the boogeyman in 1999, he wrote a whole book on bin Laden, giving us Iraq and Iranian ties, by the way. And then all of a sudden, he becomes that boogeyman. And this is Yosef Bodansky, full of counterterrorism groups, dual Israeli citizen, of course. And he's literally the person, okay? There's literally someone who wrote the book on that. And let's not forget, while we watch this, that Mike Pompeo, we're talking about 9/11, right? Well, before he even hears what he's about to hear, because it gets even spookier than we're going to war with Iraq immediately, before he hears that, we pass the AUMF, the authorization of military force that has never been retracted. And as long as you can tie it to Al-Qaeda, well, then you can just do whatever you want. That's the deal. You get to do whatever you want. So let's let Mr. Clark finish up.
So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, and he said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years."
Wow.
Starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon.
So we all know about Syria. You know, Syria's still in turmoil right now. But let's go to Lebanon, should we? Oh, look at that. We actually made good with the Lebanese military in 2005, giving them $2.3 billion in assistance. So in that one, we didn't really have to put American troops on the ground other than to become their allies and now supply them with weapons. So it looks like the military-industrial complex has taken care of Lebanon. Let's continue.
Libya, Somalia,
Libya, Somalia, and he's about to say Sudan. Well, let's see here. Oh, February. U.S. forces bombing Libya again. After we took out Gaddafi, we're still in Libya. But wait a minute. Oh, U.S. military mission in Somalia, which is already there. Ground troops, guys. We're not talking about it. Could take 7 years to complete. This is in April. Okay, still there. And Sudan, military meets with U.S. diplomats while Bashar charged with corruption. So basically, there's been a military coup there, and the military has continued to cozy up during AFRICOM and take over that region as well. So it's all right there. It's all right there. Let's let him finish up, Wesley Clark.
Sudan, and finishing off Iran.
Iran, there it is. He wants Iran. That's the last domino. And here he is at least warning against military force, but then propagating a lot of the nonsense as well. This is just the other day. I think, actually, it might have been today he said this.
Can't use military retaliation against Iran. They don't want to invite it, so it's a game of increasing leverage. You got the leverage.
They don't want to invite it? You don't think they're trying to invite it?
No, not by their direct action. They want to put the blame on the United States.
Oh, see, that's where he loses it. But you see how CNBC, CNBC, warmongering, right there. CNBC, warmongering against Iran.
So if the United States, they want to goad the United States into action, but they don't want to escalate themselves to such an extent that they're accused of initiating it.
There are people inside the administration who believe that last week's actions were an escalation.
They were an escalation, but what they did is they caught the United States at the limit of what we can do at this point. So we've got President Abiy's been over there. This is the time to take advantage of the opening and get some dialogue going with Iran. You got the leverage. Now do the talking. Look, you're not going to get everything that Secretary Pompeo wants in his 12 points. Iran's still going to be Iran. But it's important to dialogue. We need our allies, our West European allies, with us on this, and in order to deal with China. So this.
Listen, I'm going to say he's talking a lot more sense than others. Here, Pence, the day before, basically announces that Trump is going to be doing these sanctions that we already went over. This is going to be the meat and potatoes, guys, because there's a lot said here. For instance, it's not talked about that Iran had a lock on one of their civilian aircraft. I'm not sure if it was civilian, but aircraft with people on it, and they chose not to shoot it down. And Iran said it was in their airspace. Of course, Pence is denying that, but I feel like they were trying to bait them. I've talked about this beyond just the drone. So let's go over this part right here.
Against Iran. And frankly, as we sit here today, since the end of the Iran nuclear deal now a year ago, and additional sanctions that the United States is imposing, Iran's economy is literally crumbling. And over the last 2 months, we've seen them lashing out even more than they usually do. Remember, Iran is...
Let's stop. Their economy's crumbling. So they're admitting that they're already put a stranglehold on these people. But now they're just insinuating that they're lashing out. And again, we've gone over it. What's the worst they've done? Possibly a reconnaissance mission to get a limpet mine off a ship. That's what they've proven. Not that they planted anything. Not that they blew anything up. With the attack in the harbor of Four, still seeing no evidence it was actually the Iranian Revolutionary Guard or proxies or sympathizers or any of that. So once again, are they lashing out, or are you getting more aggressive?
As the leading state sponsor of terrorism in the world, they've sown malign influence, even in the wake of the Iran nuclear deal in places like Yemen and elsewhere.
Yeah, so they're lashing.
This president drew an end to that. We've isolated them economically and diplomatically, and they've lashed out. The tanker attack a week ago, the attack on an American UAV last week. The president's made it clear that we are not going to tolerate any threats against American forces, American interests, America's allies in the region, and will never allow Iran to obtain a nuclear weapon.
So they're lashing out, but my question was, are they reaching out too? Did you get that message from the Swiss that the Iranians delivered?
I'm not aware of any outreach from the Iranians. I know there was communication. Prime Minister Abe was actually in Tehran not long ago. And he encouraged them, as President Trump has done publicly, to engage the United States. The President of the United States...
See, let's stop it here. You don't think that Iran has reached out and said, come on, let's stop the bullshit? Of course they have. And that's why you have European officials leaking that information. Pence is a politician, and he knows when to lie, and he's one of these guys. Tapper's going to hold his feet to a fire a little bit later on and say, like Pompeo and Bolton, you were for these military strikes.
Has made it clear we're prepared to talk to Iran without preconditions.
Right.
But Iran needs to understand that we will never allow them to obtain a nuclear weapon.
So there's a precondition.
And we will not allow them to continue to sow violence across this region.
Well, let me ask you a question.
In the midst of all of that, the actions the president took, the actions that we'll announce yesterday, the president demonstrated the restraint that the American people, I know, admire and are grateful for.
Let me stop. So now he's going to boast that the president decided not to take 150 lives. Now, I've done another video on this with Robbie Martin. We spent about a half an hour discussing that and other policies. He has now used that as leverage. In fact, if you just watch that clip from Wesley Clark even pointed that out and said he used that as leverage. But what I'm saying to you is obviously they put that drone in the airspace to get shut down, and they tried to bait them. I mean, it would have been over if they were able to bait them with an aircraft with actual United States civilians in it, or military or whatever. United States citizens, period, if they'd taken out. It was over.
And as right up to the run-up of a military attack, the president continued to evaluate that decision and concluded that what had been initiated and was about to be launched was not proportionate.
Would be disproportionate, exactly.
But Iran should not mistake restraint for a lack of resolve.
Well,
all options remain on the table.
Yeah.
The United States is going to defend our troops.
Oh, they're going to defend our troops. Oh, our troops are in trouble.
And America's interests in the region.
But your assertion that the United States, that Iran should not mistake that for lack of resolve reminds me of what Bolton said not long ago, where he said nobody should mistake this as weakness. And it makes me wonder if you are concerned it will be perceived that way. Before the strike, Senator Lindsey Graham tweeted, quote, "I have found that inaction in the face of evil and provocation ultimately has its own cost. In some instances, failing to act can prove to be the most dangerous choice of all." Now,
let's stop it there. Here's where Tapper really loses me. That's about as aggressive as he gets to trying to promote this war. Does this look like it's going to be an act of weakness? And then he, of course, Lindsey Graham, another warmonger, he talks about inaction in Syria. You make me want to puke, Lindsey Graham. So, Tapper, shame on you for not pushing back more here.
Initially supported the military strike against Iran. Do you agree that there is a risk that Iran will get the wrong message from the president's restraint, as you put it?
Well, let me be clear. I've said before that weakness arouses evil. But this president has rebuilt our military to the point that the United States military forces in the region and around the world are stronger than ever before.
Let's stop
in fact, in the wake of the tanker attacks,
we never needed to rebuild our military. That wasn't a thing. It's not a thing. Our military budget is unbelievable. Our Pentagon budget is unbelievable. It is 2 to 3 times that of any other developed nation in the world. And it always has been. We've got money for our military. I saw somebody in my comments saying, oh, Obama dismantled the military. No, he did not. Absolute nonsense. First of all, the rise of private military groups is extremely alarming and really a subsidy of the same military-industrial complex, okay, the same globalists that actually run our military system.
Just a week ago, the president announced that we were moving another 1,000 troops into the region. And I expect Iran and our allies in the region have no doubt about the military capabilities of the United States of America.
I agree there. Why would they have any doubt about our capabilities? It's badass. Everybody knows it.
I believe that's probably
isn't willing to pull the trigger. Is that a concern at all?
Well, I think the president was encouraged that Iran actually announced that they were tracking a manned American surveillance aircraft on Friday and did not fire on it.
So there it was, a manned American surveillance aircraft, and they didn't fire on it. Now, there's different reports of how many people that are, but let's repeat that. Why isn't this in the media all over? Okay, let's say it again.
We're moving another 1,000 troops into the region.
You know, forget about the 1,000 troops into the region. We've talked about that. There was an open plan for at least 10,000 of them. Right now, I think it's officially at about 2,500. He said another 1,000 troops. Again, the escalation. He's going to get it to 10. But listen.
And I expect Iran and our allies in the region have no doubt about the military capabilities of the United States of America.
But
I believe that's probably
isn't willing to pull the trigger. Is that a concern at all?
Well, I think the president was encouraged that Iran actually announced that they were tracking a manned American surveillance aircraft on Friday and did not fire on it, even though they believed it was in their airspace. Now, all of that convinces us. No, of course.
Oh, no, of course not. Thank you, Tapper, for asking the relevant question. They tried to bait them with a manned surveillance craft. Okay, it wasn't just the drone. Let me repeat that. They shot down the drone. They baited them to the point where they shot the drone down. Again, 60,000 foot altitude, could have easily evaded. Never happens before. All of a sudden in this escalation, it's happening. And then they bait them with a manned surveillance craft.
Of course not. All of that gives us some sense that in Iran that they understand the military capabilities of the United States of America. But this is a president who is always going to count the cost. And I was there through the course of the deliberations. Over the last week, in the wake of the tanker attacks, the president was talking about options. In the wake of the attack on the unmanned UAV, there were extensive discussions. But at the end of the day, the president looked at the potential loss of human life relative to an unmanned American drone that had been shot down and concluded that that was not proportionate.
But you support? No, it wasn't. It wasn't proportionate. And I'm glad he did that. We gave him props for that. Here's where I'm going to end it. Tapper asks him straight up. He says, you supported the military strike. And, you know, he also brings up the point that one of the things that was odd is that the president should have known the casualties much earlier than was supposedly reported.
Right? You supported the strike initially.
Well, first off, Jake, I never talk about my discussions with the President of the United States.
But it has been reported that you, Bolton, Pompeo, all supported the strike.
All of the national security team around this president supported providing him the broadest range of options, including the use of military force. But the president's the one that makes the decision. And as he indicated very late in the process, he was given an estimate that just simply was unacceptable.
Yeah, how about any life for a downed drone is unacceptable?
150. And this is a president. I think, I hope that this is also a message to the Iranian people. This is a president who hopes for the best for the people of Iran. It was the United States back in 2009 in the midst of the Green Revolution.
All right, that's enough. I can't do it anymore. We've been rocking for 25 minutes. Guys, the propaganda is thick. I keep telling you, they're going to ramp this up. And they're going to keep ramping it up throughout July. And I really do feel that by the end of July, early August is where we're going to see it really go south. And possibly, a actual military conflict. One that is going to be absolutely terrible, absolutely horrific, absolutely at the expense of everything this country should stand for. And most people are just going to go along for the ride. That's what's really sad about it, how apathetic everybody has become to this issue. And it's a real issue. So if you care about this issue, please subscribe if you're new. Share this stuff on social media. We do, big videos like this one, Assange, JFK. What else have we been doing? We've been doing DARPA, CIA assets, Epstein, Nexium. You name it, it's all here. Walk-in talks and more. So we're doing 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 videos a day. Later today, I'm going to be on the Tinfoil Hat podcast with Sam Tripoli, so definitely check that out. I star these because there's just so many videos to go over. We did UFOs today. That one was really interesting. And I'm on my own. So if you like what I do, 5, 10, 15, anything, I'm not asking for a monthly. I'm not promising anything other than doing quality work all week, giving you 30 to 50 videos a week on subjects that matter, keeping you in the know in a real perspective, one that is not left or right, but in my opinion, about right and wrong. I try to go through the comments. I try to respond to as many as possible. I check out leads. And if you've got an idea for a video, definitely leave one. I thank you guys so much for tuning in live, and I'll see you on the flip side.